Why are we at the slingshot ride?
So I did a thing. And there's a bet at work. They said I couldn't do it, and I was like, "You're probably right, but I'm gonna get Adam. We're
I
doing
hate
it."
heights. No.
Adam,
No.
it's so not. It's like so not a big
This
deal.
is terrifying.
I
No,
just can't.
no,
You're
gosh,
doing it.
no.
You're
no,
going with
no,
me.
I don't want it.
Adam,
No, no, no.
Adam, Adam.
Oh my gosh, why are you making us do this?
Fine.
No, I'm not fine. I'm terrified. This is scary. Oh my gosh, I'm in
Yes, little known fact, we have our own slingshot ride here on campus. You'll have to join us sometime for that, yeah. So let me ask you a question. How many of you love to go on roller coasters? Ooh, a bunch of, how many of you are like, no, I don't like to go on roller coasters? Oh, a bunch of you. Okay, now, out of you who don't like to go on roller coasters, how many of you have ever had a moment where you had friends or family and they drug you onto some roller coaster you done went, okay, yeah. It's like, and then when you got off, and I'm sure that they were like, I promise, it'll be wonderful. You'll love it. And then when you got off, were you like, oh, that was wonderful. It completely changed my whole perspective on roller coasters. No, you were like, I knew that was a bad idea. Why did I get on that ride with him, right? Because that's not who I am. Well, when you think about this idea, right, of a roller coaster or the ride, it also, right, it makes this great metaphor for relationships in life. You've probably heard the phrase, right, just because somebody's on a roller coaster doesn't mean you have to ride, right? And the whole idea behind that is just because they've gotten on some roller coaster in life, filled with drama or chaos or, relational tension or whatever it is, it's like, why do you have to get on that same ride with them? But the reality is, so often we get pulled onto that ride. We get pulled into, right, their chaos or their tension or drama or whatever it is that's going on. And maybe for some of you, the ride looks like just like frustration at work. Maybe there's that person at work and they come in and there's just like how they see it, it's all negative, and they start gossiping and they start talking about it. And then the next thing you know, you're like, oh yeah, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, now I'm pulled into gossiping about this or talking about this and being all negative, and you're just like, this next year, I'd love to not go to that place, right? Or maybe you have found yourself like in that spot where it's like, man, I think in my dating life, I've found the person, right? They're the person. But like I have found the person like 3 times last year and it never ended well. And now I've got these doubts about it happening now. And there's this thing that I keep like, why do I keep getting pulled into this chaos where I meet the perfect person and then it all gets weird and goes south, right? And you just be like, I'd love to just not go through all of that this next year. Or maybe you're just fatigued because there's like a family member and it's like drama and emergencies and urgency just follows them wherever they go, right? And you love them and you want to be helpful or supportive. And it just seems like there's always this one-time thing that I'm going to step in and help them with. It's just, they have so many one-time things. It just feels like my whole year got lost in that. And you think about, and you probably haven't thought about this at all, right? But this next year could be a year for a lot of us that could have some roller coaster tendencies to it, couldn't it? Right? Like there's just a lot going on. And the whole reason we're doing this series is because just feeling all of that, it's like, what would it be like if we could just enter into this next year and find a way to just not get on that ride, at least not as often, that we don't want to be on. Because maybe you're looking at this next year and it's just like, I think God's got some things that he's pulling me toward. Have you ever noticed this? Sometimes when we get pulled onto that ride we don't want to go on, you look back and you realize it kept me from spending more time in the places and in the relationships and venues and the things where I think God was actually leading me. And wouldn't you love to have a year where you come back and you just feel like I spent more time connected with what God was leading me in than some wild rides with some other things or people that I didn't want to go on. So that's what this series is all about. But I want to start off the series, and I think one of the things that will help us say no to the ride, not get on the ride, is understanding that our mindset becomes really important. What we need is wisdom. Like, how do I unfold God's wisdom in my life? Because that's what we need to stay off that ride. So I want to talk about these three mindsets here this morning. So that makes sense. What we're going to do, we're going to walk through these three things. So the first one that I want to look at, and oftentimes if you've ever read the book of Proverbs, it talks a lot about the fool or the foolish. And so I want you to think about this idea of the foolish. And when we think about this, I want you to think about, if we think about it in a state of mind, there's one way to think about this. I had someone suggest this to me years ago, and it's just like, so, Glenn, when you're in your foolish mind, versus some other state of mind, like, how does that go? And so I want you to think about it in that way. Like, in my foolish mind, right? What is Proverbs saying to me? And just a note here, it's not talking about your IQ. It's not talking about how smart you are with empirical data and problem solving and this sort of thing. That's how we tend to think of it. I want you to actually look at some of the descriptors that Proverbs gives, that gives us an understanding of what it is when we're operating out of our foolish mind, or if we're trying to interact with someone else, and what if they're in their foolish mind in that moment, and we're assuming that they're not, because that makes a difference in this. So here's what Proverbs said. The first one, and I'll give you the verse here in a second. The first thing about when we're in our foolish mind is where there's something about us, we're closed. We're closed, right? We're not trying to take in new information. We're not trying to learn. This is what it says in Proverbs chapter 1. Very first chapter starts off this way. It says, halfway through verse 7, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. They're not looking to learn something new or understand life better. And a lot of these you can apply to reality. How does, when we're in our foolish mind, how do we respond to reality? How do we respond to truth? When the light comes our way, it's like, I don't want to be open to that, right? I'm closed to that. Have you ever heard this saying? Like, we've got a great way to describe this. Think of yourself in a conversation and you're trying to explain something to somebody, and we have this saying, in one ear and out the other ear. Yeah. It's like when someone's in their foolish mind, you can be speaking to them, you can have eye contact, they can hear the words, but they're not listening because it goes in one ear and out the other ear. So let me ask you, ever have a moment where you were trying to have a really important conversation with someone, right? And you had that eye contact and you could tell they were hearing every word, but you could also tell, like, just from their nonverbals and stuff, and you're just thinking, they're not listening, right? They're thinking about something else, or they just don't, right? Ever have that conversation? Was that a fun conversation? Right? Probably not. It's probably like frustrating. Some of you parents, you're probably like, oh my gosh, I've had this yeah. But the truth is, right, teenagers, you probably feel like, I've had this conversation with my parents. They're just like, oh no, but back in my day, and it's just like, you're not open to like the real world today or something like, and like we can all get caught in a moment where we're operating out of our foolish mind. And Proverbs says one of the markers or traits of that is you're closed. Like, you're not open to new insight. You're not desiring to learn. The other trait that you see with this, and the way I'm going to put it is you tend to dig in, right? You dig in with your view, your belief about it, whatever it is. Proverbs chapter 12 says this, 2 verses 15 and 16. It starts off 15. The way of fools seem right to them, but the wise listen to advice, right? The point is, fools aren't really listening to advice because the foolish, they dig in. This is what seems right to me. I don't need to consider anything else. This is just right. I'm gonna stick to my guns. I'm gonna dig in on this thing. And it goes on. I love verse 16 where it describes. It says, "Fools show their annoyance at once." Right? It's just like, I don't want to change. I don't need to change. In fact, part of what happens when we're in our foolish mindset is we may be hearing facts, but there's this interesting thing. You can hear the facts, but you can start reworking the facts, right? Because you can dig in a way. I'll just rework the facts you're giving me to try and prove my point, right? And the truth is, there's no consideration for really trying to understand reality. It's just, I'm gonna rework the facts to try and validate what I want reality to be. Someone is in a foolish mindset, right? Facts are just something they use to try and push their belief. They're not really open to trying to learn and understand, right? And we can find ourselves in this easier than we realize. And when we're dealing with someone else, if we don't realize they're in that place, right, it's probably not gonna work very well. In fact, we can find ourselves in that place. And part of what Proverbs is trying to say here in this moment is, be aware that if you find yourself being closed off, right? Digging in, reworking the facts just to prove, then maybe you're processing all of this out of your foolish mind. And friends, when we're in our foolish mind, man, we will end up getting on some roller coaster we don't want to be on. So Proverbs talks about like sluggards, and it talks about evil or whatever. But another one that it talks a lot about are mockers. Mockers. Sometimes, a lot of you in your Bible, it may be translated like scoffer or something. But when you think about a mocker, don't think about it as just, they're making mocking statements, okay? It's much more than that. And again, when you go through Proverbs, it gives descriptors of this. And when you think about it in that mocker mindset, right? When I'm in my mocker mind, like what's going on? And here are a couple of the things that Proverbs points out in this. One trait is you're gonna see some arrogance. Because it's not just that I'm closed to other thoughts and ideas. It's that I'm gonna hold on to my beliefs about this, and I'm just going to be right. And arrogance goes another step and it's like, and if you don't agree with me, what kind of person are you? We start looking down on anyone who has a different thought or idea about this. If they disagree with us, it's like we feel the right to belittle them a little bit, to look down on them in a moment. Ever in a conversation and you're trying to talk through an issue and you subtly begin to pick up that the person's comments have a kind of, let's say, sarcasm that's belittling any thoughts that you have on the issue? Ever have that happen? How'd that feel? Not very good, right? What's that doing in that moment? It's creating drama. It's creating relational tension. It's pulling you. It's them getting on the ride and trying to pull you on a ride, right? You're making it about something more than the issue. You've made it personal. You've made it a character issue in some way. You're mocking them in some way in all of this. Here's what Proverbs says about this. Proverbs chapter 21, verse 24 says, "The proud an arrogant person, mocker is his name, right? So this is the trait that, that label mocker, there's a kind of pride and arrogance with it. And this is what I find fascinating. It says this, mocker is his name, behaves with insolent fury. I want you to think about that for just a second. Insolent. To have insolence, it is to say, I know better than you. Like, you're like, I can look down on you for not agreeing with me in this. I have the right to belittle you in this. And with fury, in other words, with fury, it's, I get to consider you less than. I don't need to consider what you have to say. And they just dig in, right? That's that, when I'm acting that way, that's my mocker mind. I'm living out of my mocker mind. The other thing that it points out worth seeing here is this idea of control. Because if I'm right, and your opinion doesn't count, right? That's the arrogance. Then I have the right to try and change you and control you. Not work through this relationally and have a discussion where we might or might not change our beliefs. This is, I get to push on this with fury in some way that is all about control. Proverbs 29 says this, right? Mockers stir up a city, but the wise turn away anger, right? There's something about the wise, like they actually push anger and hurt away. But mocker, they actually stir it up in this. And here's why. They feel the right in all of this to try and control. They feel the right to try and gin up everyone feeling like they've got to pick a side in this. Ever have a moment where, let's say in your family, there's something that happened and like everyone in the family's like trying to navigate, what occurred. And there's someone that maybe calls you up or begins texting you, but the way they talk to you about it, it's like, oh my gosh, am I on, my sister's side or am I my brother's side? And the person talking to you frames everything out so that you end up feeling like you're pulled to a pole, like you're pulled to a side. And that's because they stir everything up. They create the tension that is like, you got to be on the right side. And that's a ride. And there's so many times we're just like, man, I don't want to be in that place. But if you engage with a mocker and don't realize it, the next thing you know, out of fear and tension and worry that gets ginned up, it's like you feel like they're against me. I've got to be against them. I'm on this person's side and not that person. Ever feel like you've got to pick sides in your family? No one likes that. But this is what's happening with it. So the question is, what do we do about this, right? Because there are these two attributes that they give. And this is where I want to talk about a third mindset that Proverbs walks it. And I kind of alluded to it. We saw it in that one passage. And it's the wise. The wise. And when you think about wise, again, as a mindset, what's it like when you're in your wise mind? Right? When you're operating out of the best of who God has made you to be. Right? Your wise mind. And again, this is not a description of your IQ or how intelligent. There's some other descriptors that are given in this. And the first one that I want to cover is this. The person in their wise mind is open. Proverbs 9:9 says this. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be still wiser. Yeah. Why? Because he or she's open. They're open. They'll consider what's being said in this. And more than that, another trait of the wise mind is they grow.
because they'll take the information in, they'll consider what's being said, and then they're like, maybe I need to adjust. Maybe there's something there that's accurate or true. Maybe, I'll make a change. I'll grow some. Proverbs 1:5 says this, let the wise hear and increase learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance. When we're operating in our wise mind, we're going to grow because there'll be guidance that we can take on. Now, does that mean that in your wise mind, whatever is said to you, whatever is suggested, if someone says, hey, here, I want you to know this, that you automatically just do whatever is said to you or taught to you? No. You don't find that anywhere in Proverbs. But what you find is they'll consider it. They'll think about it. They're not going to let their fears or insecurities keep them from considering what might be true or accurate or how they could grow. The reality is, the mocker, part of the reason that they dig in with their arrogance and seek control is because those are the moments they or us, right? If we're going to be humble and honest and say, sometimes we all do this. There's something we feel threatened by, and I don't want to face it. So I'd rather be a little arrogant and try and control it than actually be open to it. This is the wise person in this. Proverbs 12:15 says, but the wise listen to advice. They don't just hear it, they listen to it. So, as you think about these three states of mind, and you think about how often we get pulled into moments of drama or moments relationally that just seem out of control, that we don't want to be in, this is where this becomes important for a couple of reasons. One, being aware of where we are is important, because this one will help us stay off the ride. But here's the other one that I want you to understand. When we're engaging with others relationally, if we don't understand that maybe they're in one of these places, it changes how you interact with that other person, how you interact with the situation. And just being aware that maybe that person is coming from a different mindset in that moment will change how you interact with them.